to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. And this week, a little something different. This is based on a concept that popped up on the morning stream with Scott Johnson and Brian Ibbett. I want to say Monday of this week, because that's where I first heard it. And so I thought we'd turn it into our Top 5. Top 5 non-Jedi Star Wars occupations. If you lived in the Star Wars universe and you couldn't be a Jedi, what would you be? And I think I'm going to start out with my number 5. I'm going to take after Luke Skywalker, who wanted to become an Imperial TIE Wing pilot. Ooh. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to go into the military, you might as well go into the military that's currently in charge. And so a TIE Wing pilot sounds like a job you might want to do. You get some flying experience. You get to see the galaxy. The sand isn't going to get everywhere like it does on Tatooine. And so what better way to see the universe than to become a TIE Wing pilot? That is my number 5 on the non-Jedi Star Wars occupations. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 5 non-Jedi Star Wars occupation?
Yeah, my number 5 is at number 5 because it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
But definitely one of the things, if I was in the Star Wars universe, one of the things I want to be is a queen decoy.
So
that the queen could go do other stuff, and then it'd be like,
yeah. when the assassins jump out and kill you.
Give me a pedicure.
Yeah.
Moisturize me.
Here's the thing. Yeah, when the assassins come out, then it's a problem. But most of the time, you just kind of get to hang out, probably eat pretty well, see the world, do cool stuff, live in like relative luxury.
Yeah, wear cool costumes every time you walk into a new room.
Yeah, and also, she has a bunch of decoys, so even if a decoy gets blown up, it might not be you. And also, the bad guys are actually really good at finding the real queen. So, like, half the time, the decoys aren't even in danger.
All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number 5 non-Jedi Star Wars occupation?
My number 5 is actually based on one of my favorite characters in the entire Star Wars oeuvre. And, of course, that is Ackmena. And you may remember Ackmena. Actually, you may not remember Ackmena. Ackmena was the bartender at the Cantina in Mos Eisley during the Star Wars Holiday Special. So I would want to be the Cantina person, someone who runs a bar in the Star Wars, because, first of all, there's got to be tons of kickbacks. That place is filled with criminals. I mean, it is a hive of scum and villainy. And you know that they are just going to pay you to look the other way. But more importantly, you get to sing songs, and help Chewbacca's son through, I don't know, Wookiee puberty, whatever that nonsense was. But you also get to be awesome and possibly played by B. Arthur. And while I would not want to be necessarily played by B. Arthur, I feel like if there were 2 B. Arthurs and they were wearing like a big sweater and a fake beard, you wouldn't necessarily think that it was me, but people who know me and love me would find that just hauntingly familiar. And that's why I want to be the guy that runs the cantina somewhere in the world of Star Wars. And I'm going to tell people that we don't serve droids here.
Which is good, because my number 4 is a person who does a lot of work with droids. When the C-3P R units come out, or the R3 D4s finally hit the market, what happened to those old units? What happens to the unit that gets a little dinged and the person's like, well, I can't have this droid anymore, and they want to get rid of it? Well, just because a droid has outlived its usefulness for you doesn't mean that droid hasn't outlived the usefulness for someone else. And so that's why I'm saying, come on down to Steven's Used Droid Emporium, where we can find the droid that you need at a reasonable price. Motivator units may be bad. They may be good. Who's to tell until after you make the purchase? I think a good droid reseller is probably a great job in the Star Wars universe. What say you, Rodrigo?
I think you're right. I think that would be a good job.
All right.
Unless you were competing directly with the Jawas, then they would just steal your stuff and sell it to you.
Yes, probably.
We're at 4, right?
Yep.
My number 4 is Coliseum Monster Veterinarian. Because there's a lot of places in Star Wars that have coliseums or some sort of like pit with like anywhere from 1 to 3 monsters.
Yeah.
So, somebody has to make sure that like your accolades legs are all regenerating properly, or that, if your Nexu ate somebody, that,
or if your Rancor has a bowel obstruction.
Yeah, if you're Rancor, if you have to like basically lance something in the Rancor's mouth out of its mouth because, there's like a boot, like a leather boot stuck in there. Somebody has to do that, and presumably somebody who has a good relationship with the critters, of course, like I said. So my list is sort of in order of like danger. So this is my number 4. It's like it would be a cool job, but it's like the second most dangerous job that I could come up with.
Nice. Matthew, what do you have for your number 4?
My number 4, and I don't know if there's actually a person or like an entity doing this job, but I feel that one of the fun jobs, like say, you always want to do something that's memorable, but you also don't want to do something that's too memorable. You don't want to be so important that you're getting killed all the time. So what I really wanted to be, my number 4, is I wanted to be the driver of the little mouse droid that looks like the A-Team van. So I just like drive around, and I'm probably like delivering scud tubes to people, or, power converters. Occasionally, I intentionally trip a stormtrooper because, screw those guys. All they know is white suits and killing.
So you want to be the droid?
I want to be driving the droid, and I don't know. I
think the droids are
remote controlling it.
I think they're self-aware.
Physically in it. Like a little tiny guy.
Oh, you want to be a little tiny guy.
Droid, just like
you want to be. What are those guys in Mandalorian season 2 that are trying to repair the little tiny guys that Grogu wants to eat?
Those little guys.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Those little guys.
Okay.
So like imagine Ralph the mouse with a motorcycle, except instead of a motorcycle, it's a mouse droid, and there's like a little door that I climb in, and then I go and I drive around the Death Star, or places that won't blow up as well. And I give people a message, and I'm like, hey, Darth Vader called. He said something about your faith being most displeasing. Yeah, I got to go. And then, anytime something shows up that's scary, I just like squeal and drive away screaming, which I do anyway. So, I mean, honestly, the mouse droid could be the perfect job because I love to drive. I'm afraid of 7-foot tall guys who seem to be wearing an entire carpet. And this is very important. You never see a mouse droid getting telekinetically choked to death. I
see.
That's true.
Yeah. So we are into our number 3s. And my number 3, listen, there's a lot of moving parts in the Star Wars universe. Oftentimes, those moving parts tend to seize up. They tend to break down. They tend to burn out at the wrong minute. Say you're trying to get away from somebody, and you try to engage your hyperdrive, and it doesn't work. Oh, man, what are you going to do? Have the big fuzzy carpet do it? No, you can't do that. You need to rely on a good mechanic. That's why you need to come down to Steven's Mechanic World, where we can fix anything. You got an R5 unit that's got a bad motivator? You got you accidentally ejected your cargo bay on your Millennium Falcon? We can fix that for you. Come on down. So yeah, I think a good mechanic will always be in demand in the Star Wars universe. Maybe you have to fix those tie wings, or whatever. But yeah, mechanic, number 3. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is already getting into jobs that I think are relatively safe. The job itself is hazardous, and there's always a chance that a bunch of heroes are going to like run through and cause problems. But my number 3 job is being a little furnace guy. Like just being a weird little guy that's trying to chuck things into the furnace.
Like an
Or like
Ugnaught?
put him on a trying to put him on a conveyor belt or something. And we've seen several examples of like shops and furnaces and compactors and stuff, and you always need some little guys there to make noise at you when you're trying to talk to them about something important.
Right.
So yeah, every major installation is going to have some sort of thing that you chuck droid parts into. I think that's how they get their energy. So
I mean, there's so many of them, right?
Yeah, it's just filled with it.
And after the Clone Wars, they were all over the place.
Yeah,
Roger.
Exactly.
Roger.
It's a non-renewable resource, but there's still plenty of it. So
I hear you.
Yep. So my number 3, a little furnace guy.
All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is very, very important in the Star Wars mythos, and also someone that nobody knows the name of. And so I feel like it's perfect for me because I do aspire to the job of least possible responsibility. And so my number 3, I want to be the guy who lives inside garbage compactor 3683827 and eats, whatever I find. You find an old pizza or a sofa, whatever it is, you're going to eat it. And then you try to eat Luke Skywalker at a pivotal moment, but then that the bad things are about to happen. So you split just in time. So you're living the perfect life. People give you food.
Yeah, give you garbage to eat.
Throw anything in there. And most importantly, and I think this is important, first of all, there are people out there right now who are about to shout at their earpieces. Please note, I am a nerd of the highest order. I do know that it is a Dianoga. However, this particular Dianoga has no known name. So I think his name is Ed.
Do you think Dianogas, do you think they're employed by the Empire? Or do you think it's just like, hey, run down to the planet and get me one of them Dianogas and throw it in there? Kind of like when you go down to the chemist and you buy a bunch of leeches for your headaches. You think it's like that?
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't.
Does this Dianoga, do you think, is sentient? I don't think it doesn't appear to be sentient.
I think it's semi-sentient because it recognizes that something's going to happen. As soon as the doors go and you feel like, okay, it knows to get out of there. I don't necessarily know that sentience in Star Wars is a good argument to start having because, again, droids are treated as property and the droids clearly have sentience and emotion and, think of themselves as entities. So I feel like Ed, the Dianoga, just sort of hangs out, does his thing, maybe plays Magic the Gathering with his friends or hangs out on Zoom and plays Jackbox game.
I don't think those things have been invented yet by the time Star Wars is around.
No. They actually, the reason that we have them now is because of memories of things that happened. It's kind of like how, we only have flip phones because of the Star Trek communicators. It's all a circle. Time is a flat circle. And also, okay. Yeah, what do you got?
I was going to say, I think that Dianoga is probably actually just like a neutral entity. Like the Empire doesn't put them in there to break down the trash. It just they probably have a life cycle where they start out like really small, so they get into the trash
They're
system,
like mice.
And then they grow, and either the Empire, the Imperials are like, well, somebody eventually is going to have to get that thing out, but I don't want to do it right now. Or they're kind of neutral. Maybe they break down trash or whatever, but they're not there on purpose. They're just something that you kind of have to deal with once you get one.
Yeah.
What if it's like a spider? Like you get a spider, but you leave the spider because it's eating all of the annoying...
Something like
also, very important, at no point did anybody try to telekinetically choke the hell out of the Dianoga.
Well, of course
That's why it's my number 4.
There were only 3 people in there, and none of them knew that they had this thing called the Force yet.
Yeah, they hadn't figured it out.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
Yep. All right. We are about to hit our number 2s. And before we get into our number 2s, I just want to remind you that we have a way that you can support all this insanity week after week, year after year for super low cost. of like $5 a month. If you want to do $5 a month, that's great. That's what we're looking for. You can become a silver level patron and support this show and all the non-Jedi Star Wars occupations that are out there. Podcaster's not on my list, but it could be with your support. So head over to patreon.com/major spoilers. Say that you enjoyed this episode and become a patron today. All right. So if we're getting into our number twos, if you are somebody, if you need to get rid of your Dianoga, you're going to have to send somebody down to take care of it. And there's one thing that I know about bureaucracies like the Empire. They generate a lot of paperwork and a lot of trash. I know that even though it's no moon and it looks like a moon, I guarantee you that those toilets are backed up with some bantha poodoo that needs to be unclogged. And of course, you got to make sure your floors are nice and reflective so that your fluorescent lights and your neon sparkle off of it in just the right way. So I think one of the top non-Jedi Star Wars occupations has to be janitorial. Nobody ever thinks of the janitors, and yet look at how functioning everything in the Empire is. You never see somebody running around going, the toilet's clogged up, because janitorial is taking care of that before you even knew that you needed it. So my number two, janitorial services. That's my number two, non-Jedi Star Wars occupation. So there, Rodrigo, can you beat that with your number two? I mean,
maybe.
You said you were going into dangerous territory, and if you've got to unclog a toilet full of bantha poodoo, that seems pretty dangerous to me.
Well, I'm trying to get away from dangerous territory.
Okay.
Right.
So mine get. I believe mine get progressively safer.
Okay.
So my number two would be pretty safe, except that in order to get it to actually work the way that I would want to and make lots of space bucks or whatever they're called, credits, I would have to kind of be working both sides, and that's as a Bacta fluid rep.
Oh, there you go.
And then, so I'd have to sell some to the Empire because, of course, they use it. And I'd have to sell some to the Rebel Alliance, of course, because they use it. And I'd slap the tank and be like, this baby can heal up a twink in only 2 hours.
Sold.
There you go.
And then you can go down to Steven's Droid Emporium to get one of the medical droids to operate the Bacta tank. Yep. Oh, yeah, we should kind of go into a partnership where everybody who comes down and says they've bought your Bacta tank fluid gets $5 off every medical droid, and that's your kickback. And then you make sure that you mention my Droid Emporium as the place to get the best medical droids, and we get some kickbacks that way too.
Yeah,
that's how it's got to be done. That's how you got to watch out for each other when you're under the tight grip of the Empire.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number two?
My number two, I think, is one of the most important and unsung jobs in the Star Wars universe. Do you guys remember when they put out the special editions and they added creatures? They added big scary monsters, and they were like, "Oh, we're floating around, and here we are in Jabba's palace, and now there's these guys." When they put those in, there's something important that they did. And I don't know if you guys actually noticed, but they started putting in these big creatures. And the reason that they're there, and this is true, this is not made up, was to hide Jackson, the giant green bunny rabbit. So my number two job in the Star Wars universe is to be the guy big enough to be digitally added to hide Jackson, the giant green Lepus bunny from the planet Coachella Prime, because, George Lucas notably did not care for Jackson, I believe. And so for the longest time, they would be like, "Oh, Jackson doesn't exist. There's no big green Bugs Bunny." And so, he's a big guy. He's like 6 feet tall and he's wearing big, broad shoulders. So you got to have somebody of my stature to block him out. And of course, his big fluffy ears would have to be hidden. That's why I grew my hair out actually a couple of years ago. So when you are trying to block the Star Hoppers of Aduba 3 from seeing the big green Bugs Bunny, naturally, you're going to need me, your number two guy. Hi, how are you? The digital insert guy blocking the bunny thing person.
Blocking the man in the blue jeans.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm the bunny blocker.
Cool. You might want to pull that microphone just a little closer to your mouth there, Matthew.
Also worth noting, you never see that guy get telekinetically choked to death.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, once you put it that way, there are actually lots of people that don't get telekinetically choked to death.
Exactly. And that's one of the jobs that I want, really.
Really, it's mostly like a Imperial officer issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's why nobody has listed Imperial officer yet. But we have reached our number one, so there's still time to put it in here. But I am going with one of the most important jobs in the entirety of the Star Wars universe. And it kind of ties back into my number 5, which is a job that Luke Skywalker had. Listen, if you're on a desert planet, staying hydrated is going to be the most important thing that you can do to stay alive. And who's going to get all that fluids for you? Moisture farmers, of course. It's an honorable profession that not enough people recognize. There's not enough subsidies being handed down by the Empire to these poor moisture farmers. I blame Jerry Moran. He talks about moisture farmers all the time, but Jerry Moran is no friend of the poor moisture farmer. And if you do it right, if you find a good plot of land with the breeze just right and the humidity just right, you can farmer up a lot of moisture, boy. And so there you go. Moisture farmer, my number one occupation. That's a non-Jedi occupation in the Star Wars universe.
Is that what moisture farmers do? I always thought that they were like growing like mushrooms or something.
No. They're literally
using like a little bit of.
So either they are sucking up the moisture so that people can drink it, or they're spitting moisture out into the air so that people can grow with it. In which case, the Baru and Uncle Owen are like the worst moisture farmers because that whole place is a desert. So they're either doing it right or they're doing it wrong. But regardless, Jerry Moran is no friend of the farmer in the Star Wars Empire. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number one?
My number one, it comes from, I don't know if you guys saw Andor.
Yes, it's the best Star Wars thing to come out since Star Wars.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And we actually get to see something that I always assumed existed, but we get to see Star Wars paper pushers. Like we actually get to see like a bunch of cubicles with like accountants or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that would be my number one, is to be an Imperial actuary of some kind. Hopefully just strictly stuck in the middle to where I get an assignment like, just being in Coruscant or whatever and just making sure the numbers on this side match the numbers on this other side.
Mm-hmm.
Because that when the Republic comes back and retakes the planet and whatever, all of those guys are not going to jail, right? Like,
no, they get repurposed.
Those are going to be considered like civilians. They didn't necessarily have anything to do with anything, and they are just going to like basically come over, take that little gear symbol from your cubicle and put in a weird little like swan-looking thing, and that's it. You just keep doing your job.
Well, there also is a little bit of the darker part of it. And maybe it's not just these actuary guys, but a lot of these people had to go to a re-education center.
Sure. If you like, you mean by the Republic?
Yeah, by the Republic. The Republic sent them to re-education centers.
Sure, but all you have to do there is be like, no, I think fascism is bad, you guys.
Oh, this one's a good one. Let's send him on.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
exactly.
You're secretly plotting to overthrow
the guys that have problems are the guys that were like, I love being part of the Empire because I get to kick people who are different, right? It's like if all you're trying to do is just like survive and keep your head down, then actually being wedged into the Imperial core is like, it's not that bad.
There you go. Matthew, what do you have for your number one non-Jedi Star Wars occupation?
My number one non-Jedi Star Wars occupation is the guy who gets choked to death in the Death Star with an asterisk. And here's why.
Which one?
That's the important thing. You don't know this, Stephen, but I'm going to tell you the secret behind the guy who gets choked to death in the Death Star. It's the same guy every time. See, you look and you say to yourself, well, that's Admiral Piet. He's a different guy. But no, if you look really closely, he's just the same guy with like a fake scar. And so Admiral Ozell, of course, that guy takes over. He eventually gets choked to death. But then he comes back with a fake scar and a hook hand. So eventually,
So you're
Darth
saying
Vader,
you're saying
the
like
same guy.
The force is fake. But
No,
I'm saying you need somebody there to keep Darth Vader occupied. So when he starts like waving his fingers at somebody, you have to be like, "Oh no, you are choking me. I am dead."
Here's the thing.
You're an enabler. That's what you are. You're an enabler. Oh no, Darth, it's okay. It's my fault. Choke me out, Darth.
Here's the thing. Darth Vader is incredibly powerful. He is literally a walking person of mass destruction. But here's the thing. He can be controlled because, as we have mentioned, Anakin is not particularly bright. And putting on dark glasses and a funny hat does not make Anakin any smarter. It makes him much more dangerous, much more frightening, but he is not the brightest bulb at the bottom of the barrel, and he needs to be able to crush people's throats. So what he does is he will be like, and he's like, I'm going to crush your throat, and then I just start going, and I fall over and die, and he's like, wow, the power is strong within me. And he's like, okay, but he doesn't realize, because again, big dark glasses, and I don't know if you saw the battle on that planet, his face was burnt. His eyes are badly damaged. They may not admit that there is such a thing as convection, but you know that his eyes are fried. That man cannot see a darn thing. And so...
Well, this is one of the rare instances where the Empire scrimped on back-to-tank fluid.
Exactly.
And Rodrigo lost out on a big contract on that.
Exactly. Honest Stephen was not yet there to sell them a droid who could fill that back-to-tank correctly. But yeah, so you get all this guy, right? So eventually, it will get more complicated because eventually I'm going to need to be having like a Bob Ross wig and a limp, and maybe I'll have a funny accent and talk like this. But eventually, we will get to the point where, Vader dies. I don't know if you guys said that's spoilers, by the way.
Sure.
For 45-year-old movie. And at that point,
some people haven't seen it yet, so you got to be careful.
Well, sure. I mean, okay. So bad guys lose. I don't know if you know that. But eventually I will then, just get to go and retire on that planet that's like Las Vegas, where Finn and Rose spent that whole afternoon just running around with ducks and things. And I'll just hang out there, and there will be nobody to telekinetically crush me.
Except for that one boy who picked up the broom with the force.
Yeah.
He's going to get tired of your stuff and go, you're weird, scar-faced, afro hook dude. And then he's going to choke force you.
He's very short. He's probably just going to...
Doesn't matter. The force matters not how tall you are or not.
I judge him not by his size, but here's the
choke
thing.
Or choke
I
not.
Am extremely... I'm extremely well versed in pretending to die when someone tries to force choke me. It's actually my skill. It's how my force sensitivity explodes itself. I'm like, is someone trying to force choke?
Maybe that is your special force power. Remember, everybody can use the force, and everyone can have a top 5 list of non-Jedi Star Wars occupations. This is where you, dear listener, who are in on the secrets of all cool things, top 5. This is the point where to head over to the secret. No, it's not a secret. It's free. It's open to everyone. It is the Major Spoilers Discord server. There's a link in the show notes. Jump into the Top 5 channel, and then you can be one of the cool kids and not get force choked by sharing your top 5 non-Jedi Star Wars occupations right now. Get on it. Be like the cool kids, not like those kids that are going to probably grow up to be Darth Vaders. You want to go in and join the conversation. Why? Because everyone loves a list, and we will talk with you soon.
This podcast is copyright 2023 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.